Aloha, and welcome back to Inside the Senate. My name is Jacob Aki, and tonight I'm joined by Senate Vice President Michelle Kidani. Senator Kidani represents Senate District 18, which includes the areas of Mililani Town, portions of Waipio Gentry, Waikele Village Park, and Royal Kunia. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Aloha, Jacob. Thanks for inviting me. Nice to be with you tonight.
Before we get into our topics of discussion for tonight's program, can you tell us how a girl from Kalihi ended up becoming the vice president of the Hawaii State Senate?
Well, I'll tell you, Jacob, never in 1,000 years would I think that I would ever be a senator. And I still hang out on Zoom with some of my close friends from high school, and all of them will tell you they never thought I would be a senator either. But, I have lived in Mililani since 1974. My children, grew up there. I coached softball for a long time and just got really involved. It was a growing community at the time. And, we needed more parks for our children to play soccer and for my girls to play softball. And so I would lobby the city, et cetera. And that's how I kind of got involved in a little bit politics and helped many other Democrats, Senator Randy Iwase, Governors Ariyoshi, et cetera. So it was a long time in coming, but glad to be here. I'm a graduate of Farrington High School, like you said, and I like to tell people that I was a governor long before I became a senator.
Yes, Farrington had many governors go through those halls. Before we talk about the topic of education, which is something I know that you're very passionate about, obviously COVID-19 is probably one of the biggest topics being discussed during this legislative session. So what has the COVID-19 pandemic been like for you and your district, and what has the impact been for residents living in your district?
Well, it's as the education chair, I think I feel it the most, knowing that so many of our students are struggling. They're not, in school, most of them. They have not had the opportunity to interact with their teacher and, other students. And that's the hardest. I even watch my grandson, who has been, actually, he's lucky because he was one of those that, could do blended. And he started that in November. But there were many other students and parents that I know who did not have schools that had their students coming into the classroom yet. So that was the most difficult thing for me. Walking my dogs regularly in the morning and in the evening, I could tell that the parking lots in the shopping centers were empty. And for me, I knew that meant that people were not employed. They were, getting time off from their jobs. So for me, it was really sad to see a community so vibrant like Mililani basically asleep. But I do see, the stores are opening again. The restaurants are coming back. So I'm really happy to see that. And, I'm very thankful for my community for hanging in there and doing the best to help us get through this pandemic.
You've introduced many pieces of legislative measures this session that deals with education and the impacts that COVID-19 has had on that. One of your bills relating to school closure and safety is SB 811. Can you talk about that bill?
Sure. Basically, that was one of the complaints that I had often from parents is that when you say that you have two cases in a complex area, for Mililani especially, and for Waipahu area, which is part of my district, you're talking about, 20 schools or so. So it doesn't give the community, very much information. You're saying that, could it be the same school? Could it be Mililani? Could it be Lilehua? Could it be, someplace on the North Shore? And that's not going to give enough, trust in our schools to make it safe for the students to want to come back, for the parents to let the students want to come back. So we needed to, balance the concerns of parents and students and staff to know that the schools that they are attending are safe. If it was the same school over and over, then do they have a problem with not having the right procedures for cleaning? So this is, to me, something that just reporting your COVID-19 cases by schools. It's not a HIPAA or FERPA violation that the DOE keeps saying, but this is transparency. Transparency builds trust, and we need more of that transparency for our public to have trust in our Department of Education.
You were a member of the Special Senate Committee on COVID-19 that regularly met since the onset of the pandemic last March. And you folks were staunch advocates for transparency of what's going on. Can you talk about that? Because I don't think the Special Senate Committee on COVID-19 gets a lot of credit for some of the issues and solutions that you folks were and continue to discuss on, how to become more transparent, particularly with our COVID-19 data.
Yeah, and it started with having information from the Department of Health, because that's where most of the information was coming from at the time, and not knowing the amount of, like, say, contact tracers. That was a big issue at the time, because who was being contacted, what kind of information was being given, and how many contact tracers did we have? And although we kept being told we had, over 100, as it turned out, at one point we went over there to visit, as you guys remember, and they had less than 12, I believe. And it was fairly sad, because in talking to some of the contact tracers, they were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and they were very, very tired. Some of them had 200 cases. Some of them had 150 cases. Now, once you contact trace and you have a positive case, that positive case turns into another case, another 2 cases, another 5 cases. And that was a difficult thing for us, is that we didn't think that the public was getting the correct information and in a timely manner. They weren't getting the information that they needed to mask up properly and to keep their distance. Or should we work from home? Including the Department of Education, that had a very difficult time, because many teachers, in this state of Hawaii, where it's so expensive, we have many families, and including teachers, that live in multi-generational homes. So they were afraid that if they went to school and taught in person and they contracted COVID, that they would take it home to their parents or their in-laws or their grandparents. So this was something that was really heavy on our minds, and we did many site visits, to the labs, etc., to make sure that the public was as informed as they could be, and that the department, not just the Department of Health, but all of our departments who needed to act, was prepared to do so.
Let's move on to the budget. For this 2021 legislative session, the budget is really the biggest topic that you folks are trying to debate. The DOE budget in particular, at the onset of the session, it looked like there were going to be some massive cuts to the Department of Education, and in a system where prior to COVID-19, we already had a teacher shortage. Can you talk about that? Because you were a big advocate on making sure that our schools were fully funded and had the resources that it needed to properly educate our keiki.
Yes, thanks for that question, Jacob. It was very disconcerting to me to learn that the original budget that the governor had proposed contained massive cuts to public education. And I appreciate that the governor has rescinded some of these cuts in his program review. But for the governor and the Department of Education to talk about furloughs and cutting teachers, and that was so not needed to alert the teachers. And we're already, like you said, in such a shortage. So the last thing we needed was for teachers to pack up and move out of the state, because we weren't going to be able to keep them on. But the primary focus was to restore the funding at all school levels, so that schools had the money to hire and retain the qualified teachers and all the support staff. And mostly we wanted to make sure that it stayed in the areas of weighted student formula, which is at the school level, as well as for our special education services. And I believe that the alignment that we have now is in line with what the Board of Education feels is a priority. We have also made sure that the federal funds that are coming down from the federal government will be spent, in that way as the board has asked the department to do.
Speaking of the board, in recent news, Superintendent Kishimoto has said that she will not be returning once her contract is over. Do you have any thoughts on that? And where does the DOE go from here?
Well, I appreciate the efforts of Superintendent Kishimoto to promote, greater equity in our public school system. I look forward to the board's efforts to find her replacement, and I hope that they will consider the unique needs and situation of our Hawaii DOE and consider local talent. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that Hawaii, our DOE system is so different from the entire nation. We have only one system, and we have no input from the councils, and on the mainland, it's the counties that really fund the Department of Education. So we have a very, very large school system funded only by the state, and to somebody needs to understand the interplay between the policymaking body, which is the Board of Education, the appropriating body, which is the legislature, and the administration of the body, which of course is the department, the superintendent. And it was really difficult, I think, for the superintendent to, to work through this. So I think having somebody local would be, somebody that can hit the ground running as an interim. And I think we have great, great talent here. We underestimate the people that serve our DOE system in the ranks of teachers, principals, and complex area superintendents.
Yeah, and to help kind of remedy that particular issue that you identified, you did introduce SB 876. Can you briefly talk about that? Because I think that goes to, trying to uplift some of our local talent to take on some of these tough leadership spots.
Right, and the reason for that bill was to make sure that the board and the public knew, the quality of our local talent. And the last superintendent, I think there were 15 that were selected to go through the whole round, and only 3 were from Hawaii. And I just can't fathom that. You're saying only 3 were qualified, and the closest one to number 1 was number 8 that was from Hawaii. And I just believe that the uniqueness of our system in Hawaii just deserves to have more emphasis put on qualifications and encourage the board to look at a future superintendent who comes with this understanding and the awareness of Hawaii and all of our different cultures.
Yeah, and for those of you watching from home, I think Senator Kidani hit on a really important point that when you look at our education system, everywhere else in the countries, their departments of education are managed by the counties. And here in our state, it's a statewide department that is responsible for over 200 schools. So, definitely local talent, I think, is needed, Senator. And I think that is a great bill.
Correct. And I think the ideal candidate, Jacob, would be, someone who has the experience and the respect of all levels of the leaders within the DOE, and someone who can pursue the needs of our school personnel, and who will communicate with all our stakeholders on all our islands. And, we have communities that are so different from Mililani to, Hana, wherever they are in the state. We just have very different cultures. And I think that's the local candidate that we should be looking for.
Yeah. Let's kind of shift back to COVID. Currently, our state is in phase 1C of our vaccination rollout efforts. And you and Senator De La Cruz, who represents Mililani, you folks have been busy trying to make sure that vaccination opportunities and vaccination distribution centers are available for not just residents who live in Honolulu, but for those who live in other areas of the island, can you talk about the upcoming vaccination efforts that you folks have planned over the next couple of weeks?
Sure, thank you. A few weeks ago, we were actually contacted by Kathy Komori from Olaloa Retirement Community, and they were looking for a clinic, a vaccination site closer to home because most of their seniors, and they have like 450 residents, many of them don't drive anymore, and for them to be transported to Pier 2 or to the Blaisdell probably was not a good idea because they'd have to be on a bus with others. So in talking to the Department of Education, I want to give a shout out to Director Libby Char and Deputy Eddie Mercero, who was able to help us. And we did have a clinic at the Olaloa retirement home, and they vaccinated them. This was a couple weeks ago. But while we were on that subject, I asked him, can you just have another clinic here in Mililani so that the general public can come and be vaccinated? So we were able to get Mililani Town Association to allow us to use Rec Center 5, which is right off the freeway on the Mauka side. And we will start vaccinations tomorrow, the 25th. And it will be every Thursday for 4 Thursdays, so April 1st, 8th, and 15th. It'll be from 8 to 5 p.m. This will be handled by the Times Pharmacy, and it will be the Johnson & Johnson, the one-shot vaccine. So again, at Rec Center 5 in Mililani, from 8 to 5 tomorrow, and the 3 following Thursdays, so April 1st, 8th, and 15th, from 8 to 5 p.m. And I again urge everybody, Mililani and others included, to please call and get their application in so that they can get a spot to get vaccinated.
And if I'm not mistaken, they're looking to vaccinate over 500 people each day, correct?
Yes, and if we get more than 500 that apply, the Department of Health is able to ramp up to a little higher amount if we need to.
I want to stay on the topic of vaccinations. People in our communities began receiving the vaccines in mid-December, and at the onset, there were a little bit of hiccups. How would you grade the current vaccination rollout, and how do you think the Department of Health is doing in trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible?
I think we had a rocky start, and then a couple weeks ago there was this huge snowstorm and ice storm on the mainland, which prevented the vaccines that we had counted on from being delivered. So as much as the Department of Health tried to honor what they had promised, they were short of vaccinations for a little while. But I think we're back on track. And you're talking about trying to vaccinate all of the state of Hawaii in an amount of time that we have. And of course, the sooner the better. I think they have done a tremendous job, and it's not easy because you have to find all these volunteers, and which is why we're using the different pharmacies, because they have trained people to give the shots, etc. And this has been a tremendous task on their part. And in the beginning, they were trying to get, of course, the elderly over 75 and those that had really much needed vaccines to help them get through this period. But I commend the Department of Health. They weren't perfect, and having to change directors and epidemiologists in midstream did not help either. But I think we're on the right track, and I'm urging everyone to not give up. Please stand in line to get your vaccine, apply, continue to wear your mask, and let's keep Hawaii safe.
There's been a lot of talk, and we've gotten a lot of questions from folks prior to this program wanting to know your thoughts about the Safe Travels program. And one of the comments that I'm reading off of social media is asking, do you think that we're going to be seeing those vaccine passports anytime soon?
I have not heard much chatter on that. And one of the things is, how do you hook up? What agency is going to do this to be the master holder of these vaccine cards? Because some people are saying, well, it'd be easy to get one and just fill it in yourself. Yeah. So I think that's the credibility of it all. But we have to start someplace, and I think the safe apps and all of that, and people can do their best to follow the procedures. We do need the tourists to come back to help our businesses, to give jobs back to our people, to revive our economy. I know many people are quite thrilled with the beaches looking so serene and clean. The waters are beautiful. But to some extent, we do need to have this tourist come back, but we want to still be safe. So I think that we just have to keep encouraging our Department of Health, the governor, the mayors, to continue to do what is right and what is safe that can be done.
Earlier in the program, you talked about how you are noticing that more businesses are beginning to open up. Previously on the show, we've had Senator Kehokolole and Senate President Koshi, and they talked about the negative impact that this pandemic has had on many of the small businesses in their district. So I want to ask you that same question. How have the businesses in your district, more particularly the small mom and pop shops and the locally owned businesses, how have they fared throughout this pandemic?
I think like any other community, we have suffered. Our small businesses have suffered. Remember that Mililani is a community that's over 55 years old. So, we have a lot of seniors living in our community of Mililani, and a lot of them have, chosen to do the right thing, to stay home if they didn't have to be out, to wear their mask. So I think the restaurants in Mililani have, those that could do takeout, etc., fared better than other businesses that expect people to come into the store, whether it's merchandise or clothing, etc. So I think of all those businesses, it was the restaurants, etc., that fared much better. But I do hope that now that we can get out a little bit more, that you will visit your community stores and support them wherever you live, and wherever you can, support your local merchants.
Yeah. Senator, before this broadcast, we were talking about traffic, and you've noticed that, traffic is back. But one thing that I know the Special Committee on COVID-19, has discussed in previous meetings last year was, coming up with a plan for teleworking. From Mililani to the capital, during traffic can be a 45-minute to an hour, even longer drive. How do you think the state is going to fare, in terms of trying to figure out if it'll work, if teleworking will work? Because, one of the things that I've been hearing from many people is that they enjoyed teleworking. So is that something that's possible moving forward? And do you think it's something that's going to be feasible for our state government?
Telework is not a new idea. When I was a staffer at the council, they passed bills, and I believe the state did too, to cut down on fossil fuels and all of that, and the parking, the cost of transportation. I think that telework is the jobs of the future. I think if you want to hire great talent and you offer telework, you're going to get that great talent. We just need to have trust in employees that if they are able to telework, that they are still going to get the job that you want done. I am, especially concerned about teachers who are not allowed to telework. And that was not, I think, in fairness to the teachers, that if you want them to be there on the jobs when there is a pandemic or something like we have going on, they have to trust that the teachers will do their best to continue teaching our students.
Yeah, so, we will see. I know many of your Senate colleagues have been members of the broadband WUI, and making sure that those students and teachers in those rural areas have access to broadband. So we'll definitely see where this goes. But it's something that the Senate has kind of taken on. I do want to go to the point of here at the Hawaii State Senate and throughout the state legislature, we've gone to an almost virtual process. At least here in the Senate, members can join in virtually. All of the committee hearings are being streamed live on YouTube. All of the floor sessions are being streamed live and on demand. And for the first time, people can submit remote testimony. So it doesn't matter if you're in Mililani, in Hana, or on the Big Island. You don't have to travel here to the Capitol to give testimony. As a committee chair, though, how has that been going? Because I know, the work continues. You still have to deliberate and receive feedback on hundreds of bills. But how do you think this virtual process has done, at least in regards to the legislative work here?
I think we need to improve the system and the bandwidth that we have here at the Capitol because, we don't, for instance, in the basement, you can't, send messages.
We don't have service here in the basement. That's where I am.
Yeah. So that is difficult. And, not everyone knows how to Zoom or to do virtual meetings. And that's a difficult part for particularly some of our elder, community residents. I mean, I had to be taught. I'm not that great on it. But I truly, truly miss the personal interaction. I think most of us do. But again, it does open up to more people to be able to, to get on. And maybe, when we're done with this pandemic, we can continue doing the virtual as well as, the in-person. I think that would be a nice blend for the future.
Senator, we do have about less than a minute left. We are past the halfway point of this legislative session. What are your thoughts as we head to conference in just a few short weeks? And what do you hope to see pass out of this session?
Well, I think we are all waiting still to see what the final budget will be, to see, where we can make the most impact. And for me, as the education chair, I want to make sure that the things we talked about earlier, that the money that goes directly to the schools, like the weighted student formula and special ed needs, are made whole. I think from what we hear, we are getting enough input from the federal government that we will almost make the Department of Education completely whole. But we have other needs too. I mean, our Department of Human Services, there's still some great concern as to how we're going to fill some of the gaps that this pandemic has caused.
Senator, we have run out of time, but I do want to thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking with you soon. And for those of you at home, thanks for joining in on another episode of Inside the Senate, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, Jacob.